people buy or don't buy out of fear. Well, think about this. What if you're a job shop and your competitor has 30 kilowatt laser, but you're cutting on plasma? At that point, you're just not going to get the business, because if that company with the laser sells them parts, they're going to see those parts and they're going to be better parts. And I mean, it still matters what the price of the part costs, but once they get those parts, that's what they're going to want in the future.
Michael, appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining the Metal is Life podcast. This is episode number 2. So you're not the first. You're not the actual guinea pig. You're like the guinea pig behind the guinea pig. There were some things that we fixed before coming on here, but there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to discover together. So appreciate you being the second guinea pig.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me, Brandon. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, glad you're here. Well, you are obviously, you are a beloved dealer of ours. So Michael Chilton is one of the sales reps for Forge, and has been just freaking killing it in the marketplace. You've been selling a whole bunch of machines, and that's pretty cool to see from my perspective as the chief marketing officer at Cut-Lite America. It's been fun to see. But I'm sure it's been fun for you and for Forge. I don't know what's been your experience so far, just kind of entering into the Cut-Lite America space here over the last, what's it been, a year and a half, 2 years? 2 years now?
So exciting for us and very refreshing, working with Cut-Lite America, coming in, having represented other brands in the past, other laser brands in the past. And the relationships that we have at Cut-Lite, it's a different feel. It's a different environment. I hate to say it, kind of, it's cliche to say it's like family, but it really does kind of have that feeling. When I talk with people from Cut-Lite, it's not just surface level. It's not just business. It's fun to be able to connect on a different level and talk about family, and really like in genuine conversation. It's not just something that we have to do. It's like, we're at the end of the conversation, let's ask about family. Like it's genuine. It's a different feel. And it's been fun and exciting for us, the involvement that we've had with Cut-Lite, and with the technology that Cut-Lite offers, it's fun to be able to go educate customers about new processes and new technologies. It's not just, hey, we're competing on some commodity item. It's not like The Office. We're selling paper and we're competing against other people that are selling paper. We have some really fun, exciting technology to talk about, and that makes the job really enjoyable. It's fun to do.
I love our relationship. I love our relationship with Forge. I love my relationship with you. And every time we get together, it really does feel like family. And so I think that's pretty special. I think that's a special relationship between our dealers and then us as a distributor, is we've been able to build a culture of just a family type of culture. Anyways, I love that. So again, thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. All that to say that. Just so you know, Michael, Tina's in the room. Tina is helping me out with, she's got her computer ready. And in case we want to look up any stats or look up anything, she's kind of doing some stuff in the background, and she's going to pitch me things. So if I ever am over looking at Tina, you'll know what I'm doing. I'm not bored with our conversation, I promise. So I have heard you talk about just high power, right? High power lasers, high power. And how it's not just for heavy material. And so that's really the subject I'd love for us to chat about today. Just as a subject, and we'll dig down a little bit deeper here in a minute. But what does that mean? What does that mean? High power, not just for heavy material. I don't know that that's as obvious as some might think, right?
Times when people hear high power lasers, they're thinking, oh gosh, well, how thick of material does that cut? That's immediately where their mind goes. And it's not just about how thick a material you can cut, but how quickly you can cut other materials. So One of the benefits to using more power is the ability to cut with gas mix. So this is a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen, primarily nitrogen, and it's at high power. So with more power, we're able to utilize greater amounts of nitrogen. So this is using the power of the laser and then pushing the material through, basically blowing it through. But when we add a little bit of oxygen to that, we can add some burn, and it's counterintuitive, but using mixed gas versus nitrogen, you actually get a quicker burn, or a quicker cut, and you use less assist gas, and it's a cleaner cut than oxygen, or you don't have an oxide left, or much less, and so most of the time you can go directly to paint. So yeah, it seems that most companies or individuals, when they're thinking about high power lasers, we have a lot of 30 kilowatt lasers here in the U.S. now, and we've got 150 kilowatt, another 50 on the way, others in process. You immediately think to, oh gosh, 50 kilowatts, like how fast can I cut with that? What I think about, and what I try to teach customers, is it's not about cutting 4-inch material with 50 kilowatts. It's being able to cut up to 2-inch, which is still thick, with mixed gas. But then if we scale that back and we go to 12 or 20 kilowatts, then we're talking about cutting, even 1/4-inch material with mixed gas, and being able to cut, I just did some comparisons this morning, on a 6 kilowatt fiber laser, 1/4-inch material, which is maybe not thin, but most shops that are doing any sort of laser cutting are cutting at least some amount of 1/4-inch. With nitrogen, you're cutting at about 236 inches per minute on a 6 kilowatt. With a 20 kilowatt on 1/4-inch, we're cutting mixed gas, and you can cut 600 inches per minute and upwards of that. And if you're going to 3/8 material with 6 kilowatts, you're going to have to cut that with oxygen. On a 20 kilowatt, you can cut that, almost 10 times faster on a 20 kilowatt versus 6 kilowatt 3/8 material, almost 10 times faster. So it's crazy, and that's not thick material. That's not gauge material, but that's not thick plate either.
I'm going to agitate just a little bit. I'm just going to ask, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, why does that even matter, right? Why does it matter? You've talked about, I love that you've given us some good points here. So you've talked about, certainly you can go thicker, right? You can go faster, you can go cleaner. You've said things like you can go direct to paint, and I just wrote down, well, who cares, right? Do these guys even care about this? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, the person that cares is the owner of the company. Because they're looking at the bottom line and they want to make money, and everything that we do is based on its return on investment. And so for steel service centers, it means if I can cut more parts, then I can backfill. I can sell more. I can put more tons out the door. And so for the owner of that company, they're thinking, okay, well, now I can cut, let's just say 2 times as much. So now I have twice the tonnage going out the door. I'm making twice the money that I was making before. It's return on investment. But return on investment isn't just about throughput and capacity. Was visiting one of the first Cut Light America customers last week that's in the Chicagoland area, and we were with a prospective customer, and they're going through the process of making their justification. So I was asking questions of the current customer that has the laser, trying to help my prospective customer. Hey, how did you justify this to ownership, and what did that look like specifically? And he said that about half of his justification was based on throughput, cutting faster. It was, they were going from plasma to laser. They had 2 plasmas and an oxy fuel machine. And they wanted to replace those with laser, and they have, in fact. They've replaced them. They run. They still have one of the plasma. I think it's a plasma oxy combo, and it runs maybe 10 to 15% of the time. But I visited this place
Wow.
2 or 3 times. I've never seen it run. So
Yeah.
um,
Just trust me. It's in the middle of the night sometime.
yeah. So about half of his justification was based off of cutting faster, and the other half was all the downstream benefits. So
Yeah.
now we can bevel, and so we have weld prep. We don't have our welders grinding, because it's hard enough to find good welders. And so you've got a welder, you want to keep his arc on, you want to keep him welding as much as possible. You don't want him with a grinding wheel. And also, that's where accidents happen. Grinding is where
Yeah.
a lot of the accidents in a shop happen. It's grinding or moving material around, which are both things that we reduce with our lasers, because we can cut a lot of parts in one process, as opposed to cutting a blank on a laser or plasma and then sending it to a machine center. We can do it
Sure.
all in one process. We can bevel it. We don't have to send it out somewhere. We can countersink holes. We can cut a lot of intricate features. Um,
Mm.
so for them, it was, yes, we're cutting faster, and now our fit up is better. In some cases, it's actually too good, and I have to change my part file so that I can adapt to how accurate the cut is. But welding is much quicker. Um, a lot less rework. So there's less downstream processing, because you're cutting a more accurate part to begin with. So the answer to who cares is the owner, and
Mm.
anybody who's working for that ownership and wants to impress them. If you want to impress your boss, it's a good, like, that's just smart. Having more power is going to make you look good.
It's awesome. I also heard this might be another half or third of a justification. You've already got the two halves, but um, it also can open up new markets for you, right? So I mean, like when you have high power, and you're able, then you're just increasing your capabilities. Doesn't it? It seems like you would be able to open up new markets for yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about a lot of our customers are job shops. So they never know what's going to come in the door next week. They never know what parts are going to get sent to them. So if you're a job shop, you're always looking for a machine with the most capacity. When you buy your first press brake as a job shop, you buy bigger than you think you're going to want, because what if something bigger comes in the door? You don't want to, you never want to turn something down if you're a job shop or have to outsource it. You want to be able to do it in house, to do it yourself. So having a high power laser, I mean, we can dial down the power when we need less power. If we're cutting 16 gauge, 20 gauge, okay, we can dial down the power and we can cut great parts, beautiful parts, without any trouble. But then, hey, if I've got some 2-inch material that comes through, hey, I've got 30 kilowatts, no problem, I can cut that. So that's one of the benefits to these high power machines from Cut-Lite is, that Fiber Plus model, the 30 kilowatt Fiber Plus that we've, is really the flagship of what we sell here in the U.S. is, it's really like, it's like your Swiss Army knife, because you can do everything with it. It's got all the tools on it. You can cut thin material, you can cut thick material, you can bevel, you can do all of these different things. You can reduce your machining time. I remember talking again with one of the first customers here in the U.S. of Cut-Lite, and they've got a machine, a Fiber Plus bevel, 30 kilowatt. And one of the manufacturing engineers, I don't know that he was necessarily supposed to tell me this, but he said, yeah, the sales guys are so excited because we're getting these, getting these RFQs in, and the quotes are going out, and the customers are like, holy crap, this price is so good. Yes, do these parts right away, because they're used to having, maybe it takes two different processes to do these parts, and so they're having to pay for multiple processes. Well, now we can reduce machine time. Maybe we don't have to machine it. We don't just have to cut out a blank on a laser and send it over to a machine center. We can do it all in one process. If you do it all in one process, then there's less cost in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sell the part for less. Um,
Just to increase
another
your margin, make more money. Yeah.
Well, that's another strategy, is that, if you're cutting parts that cost you, let's say, 3 times less, because you're cutting twice as fast and you reduce a process. So it's pretty easy to see that it can cost 3 times less. Where you can sell the part for the same price and you make 3 times the money that you made before.
Yeah.
But it's really the first people that are buying these are going to get the most benefit, because it's going to catch up, and eventually everybody is going to have high wattage lasers. We know this. It's just like when fiber lasers came out. The first people that implemented fiber lasers, they saw the benefit first, and they were more competitive. So it's about staying ahead of the curve too, because it's not if people have high wattage lasers, it's when. It's not if plasmas are replaced, it's when. It's not really a question of if.
What you're saying is there's some urgency around this, right? So, I mean, what we've talked about is you've given us, I think you've given us some really great points of, decreasing your costs, both on the part and then downstream, and decreasing the number of processes that takes, and therefore you can increase your margin or offer your product for less, and just to wrap all that up with the idea of that's going to catch up, everybody's going to do it. I think that's really interesting. So why isn't everyone doing it right now? Right? Why isn't everybody doing it? And you've talked to me before about just some misconceptions that are out there. I think you've kind of dabbled on them a little bit, but just to ask the question really directly, like, if this feels too good to be true, right? This feels like high power lasers are killing plasma on a daily basis. Why isn't everybody grabbing onto this? Why isn't everybody saying yes to that, right? Why is that not happening? And then I'm sure that there's just some misconceptions to it. So why don't we talk about that?
People buy or don't buy out of fear. Okay. So you buy out of fear because you're afraid that somebody else is going to come in and steal your market share. So you're going to take a risk and you're going to make an investment. You don't buy because you're scared that whatever it is that you're looking at it is not going to work. So you don't buy a high power laser because you're scared. There's a fear. Why is there a fear? So I remember I've been in this business for just 4 years now. I started working with Forge 4 years ago. And I remember my first fab tech seeing advertisements for a 20 kilowatt laser. And that was the first one here in the US. And, a lot of the laser manufacturers that year didn't have more than a 10 kilowatt. That was where most of them maxed out. I'll caveat and say that Cut-Lite sold their first 30 kilowatt 5 years ago. So they've been ahead of the curve. But people don't buy out of fear. And what I mean by that is those 10 kilowatt lasers 4 years ago, there were a lot of issues. Those 10 kilowatt lasers today, there continue to be a lot of issues. And where that mostly generates from is around the cutting head. And this is the secret sauce to Cut-Lite. This is one of the things that has allowed them to be so successful in high wattage lasers, is they had the foresight when they got into the fiber laser business to manufacture and develop their own cutting head that has now been successful and proven up to 50 kilowatts and above. And there are some specific details about this cutting head that allow it to be successful that others have not implemented to date, which is honestly a little bit surprising, because it's not necessarily something that Cut-Lite really invented. Others had similar types of cutting heads in the past with CO2 lasers, but they're not modifying that and using this concept in their fiber lasers. And so we've seen the issue is overheating. It's too much power, it's too much heat, and they're overheating the cutting heads. And this has been the Achilles heels of many of our competitors. It's why they're not able to cut in high power, because anybody can go out and buy a 30 kilowatt laser source. IPG, sure. Everybody knows who they are. I'm sure that they would be happy to sell you a fiber laser source. But it takes more than just a laser source. It takes a cutting head and a CNC control that's able to communicate with that cutting head in order to make this system work properly. So I think it was even before I went to that first FabTech where I saw that 20 kilowatt. I was calling on a shop and he told me, hey, whatever it is, like, you're just getting started in this business. Let me give you some advice. He's like, you're going to have your manufacturers, your machine tool builders tell you, hey, you should sell these more powerful lasers because you'll make more money or something. Don't do it. He's like, we had a 10 kilowatt laser and we had nothing but problems because the head kept overheating. And that it's not, that manufacturer is not alone. There are a lot of other companies that have had this same problem because they're mostly buying from the same cutting head company. There are not that many companies out there that make cutting heads, and there are not that many that have figured out high power, cutting with high power. So I think that's one of the reasons, and probably one of the biggest reasons why people are not cutting with high power is because they're scared. But also some of it is just just knowledge and awareness. And we've been beating the drum for a couple years now. And so it's always frustrating when we find that person that's like, whoa, 30 kilowatt laser, you can do that? You can bevel with a 30 kilowatt laser? I'm like, man, I've been calling you, I've been emailing you, I've been dropping by your place for 2 years. And so, but that's the job, right?
Yeah.
But it is, I think it's partly just awareness as well. It's fear and it's awareness. And the more people are aware of these, the more there are in the marketplace. There were a lot of 30 kilowatt lasers at FabTech last year. I didn't see very many of them cutting. Actually, I don't know that I saw any but one of them cutting.
I didn't see any cutting, yeah.
but there are more options available. There are more of them being sold for certain.
What keeps people from buying is obviously fear. That's for sure it. And so I think one of the misconceptions or things that people need to be educated on, what you're saying is, well, first of all, the early ones to the market, the 10s that they may have been hearing about, or even some of the other brands that do have issues with their cutting heads over them overheating. That is something that is not an issue with Cut-Lite. And so a misconception is that lasers overheat, right? And lasers overheat, and it ends up costing you a ton of money, and you're not getting the ROI that you think you're going to because the thing's down all the time, right? And what I hear you saying is Cut-Lite's cutting head is the secret sauce, and they don't overheat, and therefore we're just not seeing a lot of issues around that. So that argument or that fear is a misconception at this point, right?
Correct. It's misconception for Cut-Lite.
For Cut-Lite, yeah, yes. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Good.
Yes.
Good. What other Michael? What other misconceptions might be out there? I mean, so if I get over that objection of, nah, man, I heard that you guys are just frying cutting heads, or that's my thing of lasers, is my understanding of lasers. What else? What else is a misconception out there?
I don't cut 1-inch material, so I don't need a 20 kilowatt laser. It comes back to what we were talking about earlier with, the 50 kilowatt laser. Okay, you can cut 4-inch material. And so people think, 20 kilowatt laser, that's I can cut up to 1.5-inch material. Well, I don't cut 1.5-inch material. Well, it's not about how thick you can cut. It's how quickly you can cut other materials as well. So on a
Hmm.
20 kilowatt laser, you can use a full 20 kilowatts. You get you paid X amount for this 20 kilowatt laser. You can use all that dollar amount. All of that is justified on your quarter inch material. And I don't think a lot of people know that. Um,
Mm.
People seem surprised when I tell them you can use 20 kilowatts on quarter inch material. And, you can debate whether quarter inch is thin or not, but here in the Midwest, we're an ag country, and no, that's not sheet metal, but it's not thick either. That's a pretty common thickness to cut, and you'd have a hard time finding too many shops that didn't cut a fair amount of quarter inch. I mean, maybe if you're cutting enclosures and thin sheet metal, but you could be a shop that's doing a lot of that, but you also cut a fair amount of quarter inch or above. So I think it's they don't realize that you can use all of that power on this thin of material, right? Um, I guess I didn't look it up this morning to see what the thinnest I could use a full 12 kilowatts on, but I'm guessing it's somewhere around. I mean, it's going to be less than 3/16. It's going to be um, probably 10 gauge or thinner that you can use a full um, 12 kilowatts of power, and that's kind of where I would define today high power lasers. High power laser has changed a lot over my time in the business.
Yeah.
Um, just we have much more powerful lasers today. I would say that 12 kilowatts and up is really high power today. Um,
Hmm.
but realistically, most of the lasers that Cut Light has sold in the U.S. are 20 kilowatt and up.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Personally, I haven't sold one less than 20 kilowatts here in the U.S.
It seems to be where we stand apart, is in the high power stuff. I mean, you already mentioned we've got the 50 kilowatt. Those of you that are following our manufacturer, Cut Light Penta, in Italy, you'll see that they've been cutting on a 60K now, right? And they're not stopping there. They're going to continue. They're going to continue to go, because we keep finding use cases, real business cases for higher power. For higher power, right? And so it's fascinating to me, to see that. Go ahead.
I was at Lamira in I think that was in May, and then I was back in Italy last month and saw the 60 kilowatt a couple times. And Cutlight isn't developing these higher power lasers just to say, hey, we have a 60 kilowatt laser. They're doing it because there's a business case for it. There's a reason, there's benefit. And IPG is sending them these power sources to come up with the application, to develop it. And they wouldn't be putting this money into R&D. They wouldn't be putting all of these resources into developing higher power lasers if there wasn't a reason for it. And so there definitely is business case, and that's shown in the fact that we're selling them. We're selling 50 kilowatt lasers.
Yeah, exactly. And just to make sure everyone knows, I mentioned 60, and there's always going to be. I mean, again, Italy, our manufacturer is amazing. They're innovating and they're pushing the envelope on that. In terms of what we sell in America, we sell only the tried and true stuff, right? So the 50K, this thing's been cutting. It is tried and true. We're ready to, and when we've been selling it. And so that's where we're at. But just to highlight, you can always bet. We've been cutting on a 60K at the manufacturer, but you can always bet that we're going to be pushing the envelope on that. So anyway, Tina, did you have something for me? Were you saying something? Yeah.
Well, you guys are mentioning reasons
Yeah.
and why it matters. And I know that Michael touched on gas mix earlier, and I just have some statistics.
Okay, we got some statistics. Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Our gas mix technology and high power, and the reasons why it matters. Thanks to gas mix technology, our systems cut up to 5 times faster than plasma.
Mm.
Reduce cost per meter by up to 50%, even on thick sheets. There's up to 50% reduction in energy consumption and up to 70% reduction of CO2.
Nice. Hey, can you go through each one of those one at a time? I'm going to pitch them to Michael. Could you hear what she was saying?
Yeah.
Mostly. All right, give me the first one. The five times. Yeah.
So thanks to gas mix technology and higher power, our systems cut up to 5 times.
Yeah. So she's saying 5 times faster on gas mix. You kind of mentioned that earlier. Do you have any stories about that?
This means like instead of cutting it with oxygen, we're gonna cut with nitrogen, but we're gonna add some oxygen to it, so we can cut thicker material than we can cut with just nitrogen. And that speed.
Actually, that was over plasma. Were you saying that was over? She said that was over plasma.
Okay.
So 5 times faster than plasma with gas mix because of high power fiber laser, right?
Because we're cutting with gas mix versus plasma. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you kind of went over some of that, the why, how that happens at the beginning. What was the second one?
The second one is because of that, they reduce the cost per meter by up to 50%.
Yeah.
On thick sheets.
So she said because of that, we can reduce the cost up to 50% per meter, up to 50%. Where does that come from? Where does the reduced cost come in? I've heard things like it cuts less material. So obviously the beam is much smaller than than plasma, and then there's energy consumption. There's different things. What are some of these cost saving things that stat might be talking about?
Because the kerf is so much smaller on a laser beam, we can do things like common line cut. Where if we're cutting, 2 different squares back to back, we can use one cut in the middle. So we can use strategies like that. But more than just common line cutting is we can nest closer together. So if you're cutting a lot of parts, you can nest those closer together and you can see significant savings in material. And that goes into your justification. So if you're using, 10% less material, that's real savings that we want our customers to put into their ROI, because that's real money that they're saving, and that is significant, and that is real. There is definitely material savings when you're moving from plasma to laser. That is that's significant.
Significant. So I mean, when you're cutting 5 times the amount of parts at 50% of the cost, your ROI calculation starts to come up pretty quickly. And I mean, to address the elephant in the room, everybody's thinking, well, yeah, because lasers cost like 5 times more than a plasma. But that difference is made up very, very quickly. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say exactly that. There's a misconception that fiber lasers cost too much.
Yeah.
When in reality, the operating cost for a plasma can be way higher than the initial investment in fiber lasers.
Yeah, so she was just kind of saying the same point. So it's like one of the misconceptions is exactly that. Plasma is so much cheaper than a fiber laser, which is true. That's not a misconception. That is true. But it's more than made up for with all the things that you've been describing here, right?
People are surprised when I give them the power requirements for a 30 kilowatt laser. They're like, "Oh, that's it." They're like, "My plasma uses a lot more than that." Like, yeah. They think because it's a laser that it's going to consume more power than their plasma, when it's actually the inverse. It takes a lot less. And, you touched on something there that, yes, lasers cost more. So you have to make how do you justify that cost difference versus plasma? But the other thing that, I said people buy or don't buy out of fear. Well, think about this. What if you're a job shop and your competitor has 30 kilowatt laser, but you're cutting on plasma? At that point, you're just not going to get the business, because if that company with the laser sells them parts, they're going to see those parts and they're going to be better parts. And I mean, it still matters what the price of the part costs, but once they get those parts, that's what they're going to want in the future. They're never going to want those plasma cut parts again once they receive those laser parts. And by the way, the laser parts are probably going to cost less because, as we just said, it costs less to operate and to run a laser.
Michael, you've got an opportunity to talk to owners out there. I asked you, who cares? And you very quickly said, the owner does. The owner does, right? Because there's a real business case. There's technical reasons why laser's a good idea. There's things that engineers care about, and we want to talk to everybody, right? But right now, I want you to talk to the owner and just say, man, look, I get your fears. I understand that. From a real business case, this makes sense. So you've got an opportunity to kind of to make your pitch to a business owner. What would you say?
This is all about risk and managing risk, and typically the greater the risk, the greater the reward. And business owners understand that that's how you make money, is by doing something that others aren't willing to do. In the case of Cut Light, we can tell you others have been willing to do it. 5 of the 13 largest steel service centers in the United States, these are the companies that are processing more steel than anyone else, have multiple Cut Light lasers. And I think actually they all have multiple 30 kilowatt lasers. So they have high power Cut Light lasers. And as a business owner, everything is about return on investment. The upfront cost is important, but it's more about what can I get from that expense. And I saw on LinkedIn a guy just this last week that has an automation company talking about ROIs, and how it's not just about how quickly you can get an ROI. So say I could spend $100,000 and I could get an ROI in 6 months, or I could spend $2 million and I could get a return in 1 year. Which one are you going to do? Well, I'm going to take the one that's got a little bit longer ROI, but it makes me a whole lot more money. And when we do these ROIs, when we show the customers the numbers on how much more money they can make by investing more than they would invest in a plasma, and still purchase the most reliable, high-power cutting system available on the market, period, bar none. Those are fun conversations because it's mutually beneficial. Yeah, it's beneficial to me. I'm the salesman and I get paid when I sell machines, but it's great for my customer too, because I just offer them a way to make a lot more money. And, who wants to run a dirty plasma if there's a better alternative out there? People don't want to have plasmas. They want to cut with lasers. It's up to us to show them why and show them the business case for it. And there is certainly a business case, and the customers that we've sold to have, they've confirmed the ROIs on these machines, and they've told us how much of a benefit this has been to them. They've told us how quickly they're paying off the machines. These not inexpensive machines, right? But they're quickly getting returns and making a lot more money than they would with other types of cutting systems.
Well, you're obviously very good at what you do, because I feel like I'm going to go buy a laser right now. I don't know why, but I feel like I should, because I want to make more money. I mean, come on, let's go.
That's why we're in business, right? I mean, business owners are in business to make money. There are other things, good things you can do as a business owner, but it all starts with making money. If you don't make a profit, then you can't do good things with that money. So it all is based on return on investment, and that's why we're selling these machines, is because we're able to show such a great return on investment, and without a lot of risk. Proven technology.
True. Isn't that nice to stand behind something like that?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of can you imagine being a plasma sales guy right now? Oh,
nope.
That'd be tough. Yeah. Sorry for you.